This episode contains discussion of murder by suffocation and strangulation, rape, torture, and suicide. Listener discretion is advised.
Larisa Dumansky and Piper STREYLE were young mothers carving out their place in the world when they were taken too soon by a sexual sadist in the 90s in South Dakota. Both women were abducted, raped, tortured, and killed by Robert Leroy Anderson, the Duct Tape Killer.
All right, you guys, so this is part 2.
And again, we want to thank Caitlin P. Johnson for requesting this, and we want to thank Beth for writing it up.
Thank you, thank you. We love you guys.
Yes.
So if you haven't listened to part 1, you may want to go back and do that. You might be a little bit lost.
Okay, I'll be right back.
But, I mean, as always, we're not your real mom. We never will be, so...
Don't tell me what to do.
You do what you want to do. That's just a suggestion. Take it or leave it.
Yes.
You know? In the last episode, we kind of finished up on the investigation after Piper was abducted. And they are looking heavily into Robert Leroy Anderson. And now we're going to jump back in and kind of finish up that investigation and talk about some trials, a trial, and things.
Yeah, we'll talk about some things.
What? What things?
So on August 1st, 1996, new photos were taken of Robert Anderson in a baseball cap and put in a lineup with other men in hats. Why did we not think of that before this? Because if we look at his ID and we look at him and we say, well, that's not what he looks like anymore.
No.
Like, I don't know. I guess really it's only like a week, but.
And also, I mean, at this point, he's not really able, unless he's given the okay to have photos taken, he wouldn't have been made to take new photos.
Right.
No. But now.
I guess that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I rescind my blinking.
Okay. Well.
Okay.
Damage has been done, but.
Well,
all right.
That's true. Sorry. Vance was immediately able to ID Anderson as the man who had stopped by his house on Friday, July the 26th. Now I'm feeling real silly. That's only like 4 days now that we really are getting down to brass tacks. By the time we talk about the anyway. The police used the same deck of cards approach with Shayna using the new photos, and she was able to say that's the man who took her mommy. An extensive search was underway around the STREYLE property, and it was split into 9 sections of 36 square miles. They lived on a huge property. There were volunteers along with law enforcement on foot, horseback, and in helicopters searching for Piper or any clues that they could use to find her. For the next week, police followed up on all leads and tips they received, including those from 2 different psychics. On August the 10th, they called for more volunteers to do another search. 500 people showed up, including the governor of South Dakota, Bill Janklow. They also had dogs helping in the search. There were flyers put up around the area. I mean, again, this is just a community that shows up. That's amazing.
Yes, it is amazing.
Investigators now had Anderson's statement, Shayna's ID of him, and an explanation as to why the blue Bronco Anderson owned had been described as being black by witnesses on the day of the abduction. On August 2nd, 1996, just after midnight, a warrant for Robert Leroy Anderson's arrest was issued. At 1:30 a.m., DCI agents went to Morrell's and arrested Anderson without incident. He was read his rights and charged with the first-degree kidnapping of Piper STREYLE. He was placed in an isolation cell for his own protection, and his bail was set for $500,000, and he wasn't able to make bail. The single charge of first-degree kidnapping carried a max sentence of life in prison. Anderson could not afford his own attorneys, so he was appointed 2 attorneys, but they actually ended up being like really highly sought after attorneys named Sid Strange and Mike Unke.
I think Unky, maybe.
Okay. Anderson's wife Elaine stood by her husband and she made a statement. She said that he really did go to the STREYLES to inquire about the Bible camp for their children. However, it was noted that their children aged 5, 3, and 1 stayed with a neighbor while Elaine worked the day shift at Morrell's. And Anderson also had a son from a previous marriage that he didn't see. So you could make the argument that they didn't need the camp because they already had care during the day. You could also make the argument that, okay, I have care, but I want them to go to this camp for the summer or a couple weeks or whatever. So,
well,
I don't know.
And my thing about that is I understand at this point, Elaine, his wife, is going to stand by her man, Tammy Wynette style.
You forgive him.
But she wasn't there. So she doesn't know. I mean, she's going off of what he told her, which he could tell anybody a lot of things, you know? Like, it's not just because she said he really did go there for that. That doesn't mean anything.
And maybe he did. Maybe he did go there for that and then found a victim that he wanted to attack.
Had an opportunity.
Or that's what made him even think to abduct her in the first place was, oh, I've driven by a few times or whatever. I've seen the sign. I realized a woman lived there that I wanted to attack. I stopped by Friday to do a little recon or whatever he's going to do. But like, okay, maybe the Bible camp did have a place in it. But I mean, one thing I've learned doing, what are we, over 500 episodes deep in this thing? Literally anybody is capable of literally anything.
Absolutely.
And like, you think you know somebody and you might know them really well, but there's just some stuff that, I don't know though. After all the stuff he's talked about though, to basically anybody who would listen, I wouldn't even call this a like secret life or double life. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, maybe to his wife, but to other people, he's definitely let it slip for sure. In late September of 1996, the plants that had been found in Anderson's Bronco had been ID'd by a botanist at South Dakota State University. Dr. Gary LARSON helped police locate where these types of plants could be found. He took them to an area on the Big Sioux River, and law enforcement began their search. They contacted the National Guard to help with the search, and they found more wadded up duct tape next to a half of a white and black shirt ripped from the neck to the bottom. The ripped shirt matched the description of what Piper had been wearing. They also found a battery-operated vibrator, and about 100 yards out, they found a half-burned orange candle. The shirt and duct tape were sent to the state crime lab, and it was determined the duct tape found had a ripped edge that matched that of the roll Anderson had. In the fall of '96, the police were working closely with the media to gather as much information as they could for the upcoming trial. A man named Joel Woodell, was with his girlfriend when she read that the police were looking for half of a black and white shirt. Joel contacted police and told him about the black and white cloth that he had found on the side of the road on July 29th, 1996. He was on his way home from a funeral. He saw something in the road. He pulled over, and when he realized it was part of a shirt, he threw it under his seat to use as something to wash his car with.
That's weird.
Which is kind of surprising to me because I passed by, it looked like a dry mop cloth thing just yesterday, and I wasn't like, let me stop and grab that. I just passed her on by.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I'm not a see stuff people left behind and take that and keep it kind of person.
But I mean, luckily he did, because he confirmed that it was between 1:30 p.m. and 2 p.m. on July 29th, and he found the shirt 1.5 miles from where the police found the other half. Another article the police had media put out contained information about a tire popper as items to be on the lookout for. A woman named Amy Anderson, no relation to Robert, saw this and she contacted police.
You guys,
Mm-hmm.
I think now you want to have your windows open because you're getting ready to throw some stuff out.
And hopefully, since it's spring, it's not going to be too chilly where you are to have those windows open.
Yeah, get a blanket or a robe if you need something to keep you warm.
Yeah.
Because everything's going.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's going. Yeah. So let's talk about what happened to Amy Anderson. On November 10th, 1994, Robert Anderson again tried to rope his friend Jamie Hammer into working with him, but he refused. And did not turn him in or tell the police or tell anybody or anything. He was just like, listen, man, I done told you once before, and I don't want to tell you again. I don't want to kidnap women with you, okay? I don't want to rape women. If that's what you want to do,
fine.
okay, to each his own. But don't ask me to do it.
I'm not gonna stop you from doing it, but I just don't personally
No.
want to.
Who am I to tell you what to do? You know? Jamie Hammer was like, I'm not your real mom and never will be, but just don't ask me again, okay?
Well, I got news for Jam Ham. He needs to get his shit together because you have a job, a responsibility as a human being to not allow this kind of stuff. If I have a friend, which hope to God I don't, never will, but if I have a friend who's like, hey man, do you want to come abduct people and then, well, you know, whatever, I'd be like, first of all, no, but thank you. And second of all, can you wait right here? Because I just have to make one telephone call. It has nothing to do with the police, but you just stay right here, okay?
Oh my God.
Okay, but hang on. What if, though, they said you get to rape them too?
Ooh, yeah.
Does that sweeten the pot at all, or?
You know, one might think it would.
Yeah.
But for me personally, it doesn't do much for
That's
me.
a no?
Yeah, no, it's not. It's a
Okay.
big no for me, dog. I don't.
Well, darn.
Luckily, though, did Anderson have another friend?
Yeah, he has another friend who's a better friend than Jam Ham. So Jam Ham gave him the pass. And so he said, NBD, dude, I'll just ask Glenn Walker. I've been friends with him a long ass time. And he always comes through.
Torella, I'm sorry. Let's all go
No.
down to Glenn Walker. That's what Anderson was saying.
That's stuck in my head now for at least a year. Thanks a lot.
My job
Great
here is
calendars.
done.
Okay, so around 9 p.m., Amy was dropping her friend off after they'd had dinner, and unknown to her, Anderson and Walker were tailing her. In his vehicle, which at this time was a maroon Monte Carlo, Robert Anderson had several tire poppers, a knife, duct tape, ether, which is a highly flammable liquid, as well as handcuffs. Anderson would come up behind Amy, then pass her, then slow down. And this would go on until he finally sped off, and Amy thought, okay, this car is gone for good. Like, they're acting weird, but they're gone.
I have a question. General wonderment. I don't know. I know Amazon has all kinds of things. Just wondering. Can you buy... Where does one procure tire poppers?
I was thinking the same thing, because it's like he just like has like
A plethora.
stacks on stacks on stacks of tire poppers.
Yeah.
He's got like backup tire poppers. Like, it's like Monica and her 14 categories of towels.
Yes.
Like, what are his categories of tire poppers? Like guest, fancy guest.
Yes. Everyday use.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why? Where do you... Because what would you need that for if not for something like this? Like, am I just stupid? What would you
need to
tire
pop somebody's tires?
Right.
I know that, like, at the airport,
If
they
you're
do
going
that or
the
whatever.
wrong way through... I get that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
But that's like a commercial industrial use thing. Like, you would get that through
One would think. Or hope.
a government thing or
Yeah.
I know.
Are we
I'm like,
cracking down on tire poppers? Like, I'm confused. It just was like, is there a tire
Mhm.
popper store? Like, what are we doing?
I know. And you think about, okay, so this guy bought duct tape, tire poppers. I don't know that he got all of it in the same place. Rope, chain, X-Acto knife, tarps, all these things. But some people do buy it all together. And they go to places like Walmart or Home Depot or Menards or whatever.
What is Walmart?
So like if I'm doing a home project, I might get duct tape. I might need an X-Acto knife. Hell, I might even need a tarp. But like when you start putting some of these items together,
Handcuffs.
like handcuffs, highly flammable liquids, acids that melt things, even bones or whatever, like
Tear gas.
big ass totes, big enough to say, I don't know, fit a body in. Like, is there like a prep course that we can put like retailers through that's like, this is what somebody who's about to go commit a murder is going to buy all together? And maybe push we need a button under the thing that's like, serial killer.
Well, whenever because I was a hairstylist, I had to go through a course, and I'm glad for that they're encouraging, or not encouraging, but they're making people do this as continuing education. You have to know what to look for signs of trafficking. Somebody not making eye contact. Like there's certain signs.
Oh, interesting.
Where you are like, something's not right here, and I need to mentally note this.
Wow.
Trafficking and or abuse. But
yeah, because I feel like he goes and buys all the stuff. And a lot of it, I know we had receipts from a few different stores, but it was like the paint, like, I don't know. Some people are buying all this together. I guess that's all maybe the more that people are listening to true crime podcasts like they are now, the more that people will be like, getting a saw, like like, what are you doing with all this?
mm-hmm.
What kind of project are you doing?
Bleach, yes, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's just like sus, as the kids would say. I'm really trying here.
Wish you wouldn't.
The car drives away. She thinks they're gone. I'm good. Shortly after this, though, Amy drove over the tire poppers, and initially she wasn't worried because she didn't realize what she had hit. I wouldn't either. I would just be like, oh shit, there must have been something in the road that I didn't see. So she gets to her friend's house, and she sees that one of her tires is slowly leaking air, and the closest place to fix this was a service station. She'd seen it a few miles back, and she thought, it's not that far, I can make it there. So she's driving to the service station, and she realizes, I'm not going to make it back there. Like, this is leaking faster than I thought it was. So she pulls over, and then she sees the Monte Carlo pull over. And she assumed they were stopping to help, even though they had been driving erratically earlier. And she even thanked them for pulling over and stepped aside so that they could grab the jack from the trunk. And what do we know his plan is? He follows exactly that. He reaches in the trunk, but then he withdrew his hand, so Amy leaned in to grab it, and then she's taken by surprise because this man grabs her around the waist and tries to drag her away from the vehicle. She fought back though. She's screaming, she's shoving, she's doing anything she can to get out of there, and she actually ends up knocking Robert Anderson off balance. So she ran into the night and flagged down a vehicle that had 2 teenage boys in it. So they drive her to the service station, and she called 911. Unfortunately, not much was able to be done in her case because she didn't have a license plate number. And can I just say, just again, from covering as many cases as we've covered, it seems like the best thing that you can do in a situation like this is to get away at any way possible. Never, if you can, anything that you can do, bite them, kick them, poke their eyes out, whatever, even if they have a gun. What I've heard people who have survived encounters like this, the choice is that if you run, they might shoot you. What are they going to do if you stay?
Mm-hmm.
And he gets you in that car. Like, it's just, that's so brave, though. I literally, of course, I don't know what I would do, but
I'm in awe of people's will to live.
And we know Piper fought, and Larisa fought too, so it's like you do what you can, but I don't know, just from covering this many things, it's like do whatever you can to get away because you don't want to find out what's going to happen.
There was a lot for the prosecution to prepare leading up to Anderson's trial for first-degree kidnapping of Piper Strayle. It was determined that only the first hour of Robert Anderson's initial interview was admissible in court because he had requested to leave. The prosecution wasn't too worried about that because he had admitted to being at the Strayle residence in that first hour and had changed his story several times. Unfortunately, Amy Anderson's near abduction, as well as a story from a 17-year-old girl who Anderson had allegedly restrained, would not be allowed in court. Any evidence in regard to tire poppers was also not admissible. Why?
Why?
The prosecution intended to have 3.5-year-old Shayna on the stand as a witness, but it did bring about a lot of concern, understandably so. The defense prepared 124 questions to ask 3.5-year-old Shayna.
That is evil. I mean, to do that to a child. And, I get the defense has a job. You're trying to undermine the credibility of a child who witnessed her mother be abducted and has never seen her again and was under the impression, and I don't know if it's because Robert Anderson said, if you move, I'm going to kill you. If you move, I'm going to kill your kids. If you move, I'm going to kill your husband. But she said, and what 3.5-year-old says, somebody took my mom and she's going to die and my dad's going to get hurt and I don't want them to die or get hurt. That's not really a thing that they even really understand at that point. So I feel like it had to have come out of his mouth.
Right. Absolutely.
And you're going to grill her. It's just awful.
124 questions. That's insane to me.
That's brutal.
The judge ruled that Shayna's testimony would be done from a local library and broadcast to the courtroom over the state's Rural Development Television Network. Shayna was appointed an attorney to watch over her welfare as well as a child therapist. Dr. Cynthia PILKINGTON explained that Shayna still had not recovered and was experiencing bad dreams and guilt. Shayna blamed herself for letting the bad man into the house.
Honey.
I just got chills. That is so sad. It is absolutely not. Yes, and it's not her fault, but God bless her. The trial began on April 8th, 1997 with Judge Boyd McCurchie. I really enjoyed that. McCurchie presiding. A small courthouse in Aberdeen, South Dakota was used. For Robert Anderson's protection, there were 5 locks added to various doors and one entrance was temporarily blocked. There was security around the clock and a metal detector was set up at the only entrance to the 3rd floor where the trial was taking place. Anderson was hated so much that there was concern that a vigilante would come and attack him. There were so many people that wanted to attend the trial that a ticket system was put into place. There were colored tickets for family members, the media, jurors, and then a handful of spectators. There was evidence presented that there was a DNA match from the hairs found on the bondage board in the back of the Bronco that matched DNA evidence from the Strayle home. There was blood found on the crotch of Anderson's pants that matched the blood from the used sanitary pads found in the Strayle home, and that is what made him not wearing any underwear at his interview so important. When it was time for Shayna's testimony, she was given a security blanket like she had been given in therapy sessions, and so she would put it over her head when she didn't want to answer a question.
Bless her.
I know. And it really, I understand, because with cases, when we talk about children in any capacity, whether they're unfortunately the victim or whatever, it's I can hear the age, and I understand. She's 3.5, I get it. But then stuff like this, when she was given a little blanket, and if she put it over her head, then it really drives home how little she was. It's just so sad. Ugh. Shayna was first asked her age, and then she held up 4 fingers. So at this point, when the trial began, she was 4 instead of 3.5. She was then asked to identify the bad man from a series of photos in front of her, but she immediately put the blanket over her head. She was asked 3 more times, but she did not answer. Shayna did not testify at the trial. However, they did play the audio of the voicemail Vance had left on the answering machine. And as Vance was hanging up the phone, Shayna picked up the call, and the machine kept recording. And the courtroom heard, "I hope he calls again. Papa, please call back." Oh, it breaks your heart. I can't.
It's so sad.
Piper,
they were in this house for
hours.
Long time.
A long time. And of course, she just wants her mom and dad.
They were terrified. Yeah.
Piper's parents had driven up from Texas for the trial, and her father had threatened to kill Robert Anderson. He was pulled aside and told that if he meant that, the attorney would need to tell the judge. He said, "I mean it. I would kill Anderson."
Yeah. You want me to tell the truth? Tell the truth.
Yeah. And I honestly can't blame him for feeling that way.
No.
Judge McMurchie ruled that he was banished from within a mile of the courthouse and was to meet a DCI agent every morning at the hotel or in the hotel and every evening while Anderson was being transported. For the remainder of the trial, Robert Anderson wore a bulletproof vest. A jury of 10 women and 2 men deliberated for 5 hours. They took 3 separate votes, and each time unanimously voted guilty. About a year after Piper went missing, on July 18, 1997, Judge McMurchie sentenced Robert Leroy Anderson to life in prison.
Too bad, so sad.
Yeah, right?
At the state penitentiary, Anderson was able to request a cellmate, and he requested Jeremy Brunner. Since the two didn't have anything better to do than talk, that's what they did. Jeremy was the kind of guy who knew his way around a prison. He had false stories about his rap sheet and things that he had done. This had gotten to Anderson, and it was why he requested him to be his cellmate. So Anderson learned that Jeremy had been able to pin his crime on someone else, and he was hoping that Jeremy could help him do the same thing. How you gonna do that if all the evidence is on you?
I don't know.
Her blood was on your pants.
The hairs were on your board in your car. But
you were the only one ID'd. Shayna never said 2 men came into mom's house, in our house or, yeah. Anyway, he's, Robert Leroy Anderson is literally the guy who thinks he's the smartest guy in the room. He brags about being as smart as Albert Einstein, but gives his full name to this entire family a couple days before he abducts and kills a woman and has witnesses there.
And goes to be interviewed by police and was like, I've never seen her. Okay, I was there once. All right, I was there 3 times. Okay, maybe, he's just... I don't think we're working with the brightest bulb in the crayon box.
You are not too smart.
Exactly. Just ridiculous. But he thinks he's going to be able to pull one over on the cops or whatever. So when Anderson asked Brunner if he could help him, he was told he would need to give him all of the details. And he did. So he told him all about what he did to Larisa Dumansky and how his best friend Glenn Walker had assisted him. Anderson and Walker were driving around, and Anderson was detailing what he intended to do to Larisa. Walker agreed to help Anderson, and they made their way to the Morel's parking lot in the Monte Carlo, which, right there tells you, they're just driving around hanging out, which means Robert's not working that night.
Mm-hmm.
So again, everybody that works there should be a suspect until everybody that works there is cleared.
And we don't know what ruled, but if they, and we don't even know if they had questioned Robert Anderson in this case, because as far as I know, he piqued people's interest after Piper. So
I don't know.
Yeah,
just this guy sucks.
Sucker.
So they parked near Larisa's minivan, and Anderson let the air out of its front tire. Just after 1 a.m., they heard footsteps approaching, and there was no one else in the lot. So while Larisa was putting her key in the lock, Anderson snuck up behind her and grabbed her from behind. Which is exactly what the evidence suggests, because her key is in the door, and it's just left there. And he said, "Don't say a word or you're dead." Larisa was struggling, so he threw her to the ground. He got on top of her, and he put a knife to her neck. Walker came over and bound her wrists with duct tape, and then the 2 men put her in the trunk of the car. They drove toward a remote area just outside of town that Anderson had previously picked out. Before they make it, Walker decided he wanted out, and Anderson agreed to take him home. And he didn't call anybody.
Yes, I was going to say.
He didn't tell anybody. He didn't come forward when they were looking for Larisa. He just went home and said, "I've washed my hands of it. I'm done."
Jam Ham and Dumas Walker can go f themselves.
Straight to AG double hockey sticks. So after he drops Walker off, he actually pulls Larisa out of the trunk and he makes her get in the front seat with him. And she told him that she had never been with another man beside her husband and asked what was going to happen to her. And he said, "Well, that depends on you." No, it doesn't. Over the next 4 hours, he repeatedly raped Larisa while she pleaded for her life. She also told him that she was pregnant. She told him she wouldn't tell anyone what he had done if he would just let her go. Anderson had planned to strangle and resuscitate Larisa over and over again, but changed his mind. Didn't Sam Little do that? Is that who it was that
I think so. Yes, I think
because he had a thing about the throats? Yeah. After he raped her for a final time, he slowly taped her mouth and nose shut with duct tape. He said that he left her eyes untaped so he could watch the life drain from her eyes while she died. That was very important to him. That was one of the things that thrilled him the most about killing people, is he wanted to look into their eyes and see like the fear and the life drain out of it. What a despicable piece of crap. Hate him.
I don't have any words for...
No. After her last breath, he carried Larisa's body and put her back in the trunk of his car and drove home to get some sleep. Because
tiring.
You would need a nap. Yeah. He decided to keep her necklace as a trophy. He decided that Walker was going to help him dispose of her body and waited for him to get off work the next day at 4 p.m. And Walker does this again, doesn't... Brr. So they headed toward Lake Vermilion and dug a grave under a chokecherry bush. The night before he first went to the Strayle home, Anderson started worrying that Walker would use Larisa's body as leverage if he ever got arrested. So he decided to move her body from where he buried her under this bush and scatter her remains where they would never be found. So he dug up the grave and he used a shovel to break apart her skeleton. He then broke each tooth from her skull to prevent dental records from being used. He drove around and threw pieces of Larisa's skeleton into the river, down ravines, and into overgrown ditches. It's like, is it not enough that you take these people from their loved ones and take them from the world, but you can't allow them to at least find their bodies and bury them?
Right.
That's like such another level of just...
evil.
Yeah.
And not
It's
only
awful.
find their bodies, but find their intact bodies or all of the remains. Because having to, and this is going to get, I think, I don't, it's morbid, I guess is the right word. I don't know. But if, let's say, Larisa weighed 120 pounds when she passed away, and the remains that you're able to bury are 4 or 5 pounds, that's not fair. That's not enough. Like,
Yeah.
What is the... I just can't imagine what the family...
No, yeah, to just have, like, to know that you're burying part of someone is just, it's horrific. It's horrible to do to people. Again, we always say this, there's a ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
When you take somebody from this earth, there are so many victims left in that wake. And this is just another way that you're re-victimizing them, all of them, by not allowing them to at least bury the person that they loved and have somewhere to go visit. You know, you can have a memorial spot and all that stuff. And even if you recover some of their remains, it's better than nothing, I guess, but it's just not the same. And these people are left with a life sentence. Every time they're left with a life sentence. And these people who get less than that, or, oh, he cooperated, so let's give him immunity or 5 years. He could have turned this guy in, and he didn't. And there's so many stories like that. And it's just, it's angering. He also told Jeremy Brunner everything that he'd done to Piper Strayle. When he knocked on her door on July 29th, Shayna answered the door and he asked where her mom was. She pointed to a back room, and with his pistol pointed, he rushed in and met Piper in the hallway. He told her to lie on her stomach, but she refused. He pushed her, and she fell into her kids' room. Piper actually grabbed for the gun, and it went off in the struggle. Piper fought, but he got her on her stomach, and he did handcuff her. Piper yelled for Shayna and Nathan to hide, and he continued to overpower Piper and shackled her ankles. With the gun pointed, he asked her where the paper with his name and address was, because this is going to erase everything from everybody's memory, apparently.
Apparently, yeah.
He took the paper and then led Piper in bare feet her underwear, and a black and white nightshirt while she kicked and screamed to his Bronco. He threatened her with his gun and fired a warning shot. In the car, Piper told him that she was menstruating, and he told her he didn't care about that. Piper also told him that her husband was the only person she'd ever been with, and they're trying to, humanize themselves and, saying anything that they can to, appeal to his human side, and he literally just has nothing.
He does not care.
There's nothing back there, just pure evil. He ends up driving for 40 miles in the opposite direction of where Larisa had been taken. When he got to his predetermined place, he parked and got his bondage board ready. And he repeatedly raped Piper on the bondage board and then strangled her again while he looked into her eyes. He told Brunner that he dumped her body on private property on the river and put her body in a spot where it would not be carried away. Anderson also told Brunner everything about the tire poppers and what he used the wooden dowels for. Brunner told Anderson that Walker would get pinned for everything and then he would get a mistrial. And Brunner also asked for items to plant as evidence. Anderson initially did not want to give up his jewelry trophies, but ultimately told Brunner about Larisa's heart-shaped pendant and Piper's Black Hills gold wedding band. I don't know. That just, every single aspect of this case just makes me more and more angry with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
He also told him about 2 sets of handcuffs and his 9mm pistol. He told Brunner that they could all be found in the ceiling rafters at his mother's house. Brunner told Anderson, if I'm going to do this, you got to pay me $2,000. You got to deposit $500 into my brother's account now, and then once you get out, you pay me the rest. Brunner also had him draw up 2 separate maps for him. One map of the floor layout of his mother's house pointing out exactly where the items were hidden, and then a second map of Glenn Walker's home. Again, this is the guy he's been friends with since high school.
Yeah. I mean, now, do I think that Glenn Walker was innocent?
Right.
And should not have gotten anything? No, absolutely not. But that's some friend you got there.
Exactly. So,
and thank God for Jeremy Brunner. I love what he did here.
Specifically. Yes. After gathering all of this information, Brunner called his mom, and the two of them decided that he needed to talk to somebody about this. So he had his mom call the prison about speaking with him in regards to the information that he had. He thought that would be more credible and reputable than if he said he had information. A prison caseworker named Darren Young spoke with Brunner. Brunner told him that Anderson took Nathan's tent from the Strayle house because there was a bullet hole in it, not to dispose of Piper's body. He told Young to check out the room and then come back and see him. And Young contacted police, and so they go over to the Strayle home, and lo and behold, when they lift up the carpet in the kids' room, they found a bullet hole in the floor. They searched under the trailer, and they found a 9mm slug.
Telling the truth.
Yeah, so now they've got, this is a credible witness. The prosecution spoke with Brunner, and he told them everything Anderson had told him. He said that Anderson told him he would do it again if he got out, and that Brunner could work with him, and that he wanted to do what he did to Larisa and Piper to the prison nurse.
This man obviously should not have ever been allowed to be around women ever again.
Yeah. I mean, that's just terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Brunner gave the prosecution the maps that Anderson had drawn. They got a warrant to search his mother's home, and literally within 5 minutes, they found all the items that Anderson said would be there. I mean, again, this guy is smarter than Albert Einstein, but he meets a guy in prison and is like, I trust this guy with everything I have. He's going to get me out of here.
Yep.
For $2,000. What does he care if you get out?
He doesn't.
Exactly. Bill Dumansky had never stopped looking for his wife, even hiring psychics and private investigators. By this time, Vance had accepted that Piper wasn't missing. On August 26, 1997, both Bill and Vance received phone calls asking them to come down to the station to identify some of their wife's belongings. The two arrived at the station right about the same time. When Bill was shown his wife's necklace, he was very upset, and Vance took him into another room to speak with him privately. After some time, the two men came out. and Bill was ready to move forward with the next steps.
During all of this, Glenn Walker decided to come forward to police and told them that he could lead them to Larisa Dumansky's remains. He said that he would do this in exchange for immunity. Why should he just be a nice, upstanding...
Yeah.
Not nice. He's not nice and he's not upstanding either. But why should he do the bare minimum?
Yeah, like, out of the goodness of his heart, but also, like, immunity would be super great. And also, I'm not going to tell you unless I get immunity. But I'm doing the right thing here.
Right. I mean, the choice is yours. If you don't want it, if you don't want the information, then... like, right off, dude.
I know, I can't roll my eyes hard enough at this guy.
Exactly. The police asked him what he needed immunity for, and he said that Robert Anderson had driven him to the remains. And they were like, dude, that's not a crime. You don't need immunity for it. So he was like, shit. They called him a bluff. So he agreed to take them to the chokecherry bush. When they got to the spot where Walker said Larisa's remains would be, volunteers dug up the area. About 200 yards from the gravesite, using a backhoe, they found a rib, fragments of a pair of jeans, including its leather patch, duct tape, 15 9mm shell casings and 6 in the grave, 2 jersey gloves bleached by the sun, a white athletic sock with 2 foot bones inside, and 2 women's Dexter sandals, one of which had a toe bone inside. The bones were sent to the lab for DNA testing and using blood samples that Bill got from Larisa's parents in Russia, and they were found to be a match. And the ridiculous amount of shell casings found were because Anderson would go back to the site and he would shoot rounds into her grave.
I know, when I first read that, I was like, wait, he strangled both of them. Why are there so many shell casings everywhere? This gun he doesn't own and has never shot before, and he has nothing to do with the gun. He's just willy-nilly out there shooting it all around. Like, they're gonna figure it out, man. Like,
yep.
How much do you have to just hate human beings to, like, not only kill somebody, but then routinely drive back to the grave and shoot into it? So, after hearing this information from Brunner, finding the evidence at Anderson's mom's house, and finding Larisa's remains, Anderson was put on trial for the murders of Larisa Dumansky and Piper Strayle. There was one trial for both murders. Brunner had been released from prison prior to the trial, but the prosecution deposed him while he was still in prison, just in case anything went sideways. Brunner did get arrested before the trial for, something else, but he was able to testify in court. Anderson had told Brunner that he considered himself a serial killer because they keep something from each victim, and so did he. Technically, 3 murders need to take place in order to be a serial killer. Because of this, though, Anderson does technically qualify because Larisa was, in fact, 6 weeks pregnant at the time of her death. She wasn't lying. Brunner detailed to the court what Anderson had told him in their prison cell. Anderson was found guilty of both murders and sentenced to death. Glenn Walker, because he didn't have an immunity deal with the prosecution, was charged with conspiracy to commit kidnapping of Larisa Dumansky, conspiracy to commit kidnapping and murder of Amy Anderson, attempted kidnapping and attempted murder of Amy Anderson, and an alternate count of conspiracy to commit kidnapping and murder. He was indicted on August 18, 1998, and arrested within a week. He was also considered an accessory in Piper Strayle's murder. He ended up taking a plea deal, which was for 25 years and transactional immunity, meaning he couldn't be charged with any other crime in Larisa's, Amy's, or Piper's cases. At his sentencing, the judge did not buy his story, so he was sentenced to 30 years with the eligibility of parole after 14 years. He was repeatedly denied parole, but actually was released on December 24th, 2015. I'm glad that he went to jail for some time.
Same.
He is just as responsible as Robert Leroy Anderson.
For knowing what he
did
knew.
Nothing. Yeah, he knew. Larisa was in Robert's car, and he gets out of the car and goes in his house, and presumably, nobody in his life that I know of was like, he threw up for days or acted really stressed out, or, he just went on about his life.
And he went to work the next day. And then when he got out of work, there was Robert Anderson being like, hey man, come help me bury this body. And he was like, all right.
I mean, he knew what happened. He knew it was going to happen again.
Mm-hmm.
It just, 15 years is not enough. After Anderson's sentencing, Elaine divorced him and moved on with her life. Anderson's cell was searched one day and a razor blade had been found, so they put him in isolation and he was checked on every 15 minutes. After one check, though, he tied a bed sheet to the frame and hung himself in his cell.
Both Piper's and Larisa's children grew up in happy and healthy homes and are doing well. Both Bill and Vance remarried. Shayna Fertig, I'm going to say Fertig. I'm so sorry. I do not know how to pronounce that. Piper's daughter published a book in November of 2022 called A Call to Remember about her mother's kidnapping and murder. That's
just awful.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, like, I think a lot of us, we don't have memories from when we're 3, but she had to recall this memory over and over and over and over to the police, to other people. She had to testify about it. I mean, that's probably her first memory. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Heartbreaking.
It's so, so sad. And I hope that I wish that she didn't remember that moment in time. I hope that she does remember her mother. Because poor Nathan, he's younger. I'd be shocked if he remembers anything that somebody didn't tell him about her.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And that's sad.
And I know Larissa's children were a little bit older, so hopefully they have such great memories to keep them, to stay with them. You know?
Yeah. I know. It's so sad. And and for what?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when it became so important for somebody to do that it's worth taking another life. But how many times have we covered it?
Mm-hmm. And the fact that he had his sights set on a prison nurse, and given the chance, if he ever got out, which it doesn't sound like he ever would have if he had not done what he did, he would have 100% gone right out and done it again. So
yeah. And he did appeal his conviction too before he died.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he was appealing it on the technicality that the 2 trials shouldn't have been together, that he should have had a separate trial for each murder, I guess. It was denied. And then
I think what I read was that he ended up taking his own life because it was denied.
Yeah. Because he can't, face the music here. So
I think the world's a better place without somebody who is capable and willing to reoffend and do something like that. I think that,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah. But go watch something lighthearted. I mean, my gosh, I'm trying to think of something good. Drop Dead Gorgeous. Go watch Drop Dead Gorgeous.
That's a good one. Yeah. This is a heavy one.
It's very, very heavy. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you guys so much for watching if you're watching, and listening if you're listening. But we love you, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Bye.
Bye.